Financial Modeling, Topic 5, Section 2. Using dim statements, option explicit, types, and debugging. So what if I had a function here called capm2? And in that function, I have parameters rf, beta, rm, where I have mrp equals rm minus rf, and capm2, which is the function name, that's how we need to get a value inside the function name, equal to rf plus beta times mrc. Now notice I purposely made a typo. mrp takes on the value of rm minus rf, so using this data, it should be 9 minus 2, which is 7%. So capm2 should be equal to the risk-free rate, which is equal to 2%, plus 1 times 7%, so the answer should be 9%. However, if you insert this program, what you'll notice is that it gives you a value of 2. So let's explain why that's happening. VBA allows you to dynamically create new variables in the program. So if I wanted to create a variable called MRC, I can do that any time I want. And any new variable takes on the value of 0. So in this program, I dynamically create a variable called MRP and put in the value of these two parameters, the difference in these two parameters, which in this case is 9 minus 2. However, when I created this second program line, I said RF plus beta times MRC. MRC takes on 0. Beta times 0 is 0, so the function returns 2%. So this is really scary when you're writing programs. Every typo, VBA can assume it's just a new variable. So the one way to solve this problem is to make it mandatory that new variables have to be specified or declared inside VBA. To do that, you need to add a statement at the top of your module called option explicit. So at the top of your module, let's go to our Excel, and I'll go to the developer, Visual Basic. Notice I'm going to type at the top of my module, option explicit. Now notice this module has lots of programs. It actually has all the programs we're going to write today. But if I put my option explicit at the top of my program, and then I have capm2 with that typo in it, MRC, and I then close that out, go to Excel, and try to type in capm2. Got RF, beta, RM. I get an error. It finds the MRC and says variable not defined. So what this means is whenever you have option explicit at the top of your module, meaning option statements are before any other functions, if you want to use new variables in a program, you're going to have to declare them. Now I'm going to reset here. Click on the reset. Hit OK. I'm going to reset again. And then in this program, I'm going to dim MRP. So I'm going to type dim MRP. Notice dim turns blue, and I have to dim it before I start using the new variable. So now I'm going to close this down. I'm going to try to run it again. And you'll see it's going to allow me to use MRP because it has dim MRP. But I did not dim MRC, so it's telling me that variable is not defined. So I can either define it, or I can then recognize the mistake, change that to MRP, and then insert the program again. Well, notice this one's broken too, so I have to dim MRP for this program. Hit reset. And now I'm all set. The program's fixed. So, if you have option explicit at the top of your module, it is not a required statement, but if you have it, you must dim all variables. Now, what you don't have to dim are your parameters. What you would have to dim are any new variables in the program, like in this case, MRP, In that situation, you have to you'll be allowed to use that new variable. But if it's a variable that has not been declared, you'll get an error. So why use option explicit and dim statements even though they're not required? Because it makes the programs easier to read for someone that's looking at your program. They might look and see what your variables are, and also easier to debug. Let's also talk about function types. Function types are another optional statement you could put in VBA. It does not need it. So I could say when I define my function capm, I could say as double. And then when I define my variable MRP, I could say as single. Notice as double, as single, both are blue words. That means they're reserved special words for VBA program. And what double actually refers to is double precision floating decimal place. So it's a data type. And single precision. Now there are a bunch of different data types. So you can see there is double, there is single, and it tells you exactly what kinds of numbers are double and single. You could also have things like integer or long integer or a currency or decimal. So, or you can dates. You could have different dates. You can have a variable defined as a date. Now, the only reason I would use these is it just to alert the user of the program that I'm expecting an integer or a date. So it might be easier to program. It might save a little space too as far as your computer, as far as the memory is concerned. So you may specify these. I almost never specify these, but if you look at many programs, especially in the textbook, that I recommend you read that section on VBA. They are used extensively, so I just want to let you know what they are. Some debugging suggestions. We already saw the problem there. We created a variable MRC, which was not a real variable, it was a typo. So what I say is I would recommend using option explicit if you're writing a complex program, and then use dim statements. However, I just want to point out that once I create this program with my dim statements, let me go back to Excel, go to my VBA area. Once I know the program's working, a lot of times I'll go back and I will comment the dim statements out. That way, if I copy these programs and use them in another workbook, I don't have to worry that option explicit has been turned on. So I'm going to turn off option explicit by simply putting a single quote in front of the word option explicit. It turns green, which means it's a comment and it's not being used. So option explicit and dim statements will make it easier to help find your mistakes. Another thing you want to do is also, I would always know the solution to a problem before I actually code it. So I didn't do that. I didn't do a good job there. So what I would normally do is before I insert the program, I'm going to take RF plus RM minus RF, which is my market risk premium, times my beta. So I would make sure I know the answer before I actually write the program, to just be a check to make sure I got it correct. I would also use comment lines. That's going to help you keep straight what the different variables are, what the program's doing, how users should input data. So I would definitely use comment lines to describe to yourself, future self, or other people what is going on in the program. And I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but if you go into find a function, so if you go to Excel, and I'm going to go and insert a module, and I'm going to go grab my program, capm, copy, go to module 2, and paste it. So now capm is in module 1, it's in module 2. And then if I go here to try to insert the function, user defined, and I'm looking for capm, notice capm is missing. That's because if a program is in 2 different modules with the same name, Excel doesn't know which one to insert, so it just leaves it blank. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove that module, and now I could use the program capm. So that's a common mistake. A lot of people, as they keep hitting insert new modules and then start naming functions with the same name or duplicate versions. Another thing that's a common mistake in VBA at the very beginning is make sure the program you wrote is in a module inside your workbook. So I'm going to go back to the VBA area. I'm going to point out the stuff on the left panel here. This says Project, VBA Project. Here is my FinMod Topic 5 Excel file. It looks like it has one sheet and it has one module. A very common mistake is to actually start writing the program. If I double click where it says, say, Sheet 1, I can start writing programs here. However, I will not be able to access these. Only programs and modules will be able to be accessed from the worksheet. However, you can create space here in different elements, whereas this one says Sheet 1, this one says this workbook, and you could write programs here, but you will not have access. So I would make sure it's always in a module and make sure you only have one module. The other thing to be careful of is if you have multiple spreadsheets up, you will notice that these you may have a module 1 in this workbook, but also a module 1 in another workbook, or even module 1 in a PowerPoint file. So always make sure where you are at any particular time. Notice I'm in module 1 inside this spreadsheet called FinMod Topic 5. One way of also making sure is if when you're in the VBA environment, click on where you are, then look up top. And it says FinMod Topic 5 Start Excel File, Module 1 Code. So keep straight where you actually are writing the programs. This topic on using dim statements, option explicit, types, and debugging.